This is Dystopian Fiction Lesson 11. The aim of this lesson, and in fact all the lessons during the course of this week, are for you to write a first draft of your dystopian scene. So, assuming that you completed the last lesson, which gave you some guidance about how to plan this scene, one of the things that was also mentioned on that previous lesson was for you to look back at all the work you've done so far in this dystopian unit, and that's 4 weeks of lessons, and to look back at those lessons and to take out, keep make a note of, or print out, or gather in some way, put in a folder, a Word document folder, whatever, but to sort of not ignore any good writing you've done so far, because you might be able to use some of it, you might be able to modify some of it, maybe do versions of what you have. Don't throw away, figuratively speaking. I mean, you're not throwing away, but don't ignore anything you've done so far. You might be able to use it. So once you've planned and you have your scene structure in place, it's important to decide, and you may, if you have not already done so, whether you're going to use a first or a third person narrative voice. What we're going to do now is, before we start writing, I'm just going to look at an extract from a very famous dystopian novel called Fahrenheit 451 for some last minute inspiration, but also to see just a quick reminder about how this 3-part scene structure works in practice. It would help your understanding of the extract if you have a bit of context about the novel. So, Ray Bradbury, Fahrenheit 451, it's centred around a character called Guy Montag, and he is a fireman in this world, but unlike the firemen in our world, who put out fires, his job is to start them, and specifically to burn books. So it's a society whereby any ideas that are not the same as the authorities are basically destroyed. Okay, so the idea is to kind of control and eliminate independent thoughts. Okay, extract from Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. It was a flaking 3-storey house in the ancient part of the city, a century old if it was a day, but like all houses, it had been given a thin, fireproof plastic sheath many years ago, and this preservative shell seemed to be the only thing holding it in the sky. "All right, men, let's get 'em." Next thing, they were up in musty blackness, swinging silver hatchets at doors that were, after all, unlocked, tumbling through like boys all rollick and shout. "Hey!" A fountain of books sprang down upon Montag as he climbed, shuddering up the sheer stairwell. How inconvenient. Always before it had been like snuffing a candle. The police went first and adhesive taped the victim's mouth and bandaged him off into their glittering Beetle cars, so when you arrived, you found an empty house. "Quick with the kerosene! Who's got the match?" But now, tonight, someone had slipped. This woman was spoiling the ritual. The men were making too much noise, laughing, joking to cover her terrible, accusing silence below. She made the empty rooms roar with accusation and shake down a fine dust of guilt that was sucked in their nostrils as they plunged about. She shouldn't be here, on top of everything. Books bombarded his shoulders, his arms, his upturned face. A book alighted almost obediently, like a white pigeon, in his hands, wings fluttering. In the dim wavering light, a page hung open, and it was like a snowy feather, the words delicately painted thereon. "Montag! Up here!" The men above were hurling shovelfuls of magazines into the dusty air. They fell like slaughtered birds, and the woman stood below like a small girl among the bodies. Montag had done nothing. His hand had done it all. His hand with a brain of its own, with a conscience and a curiosity in each trembling finger, had turned thief. Now it plunged the book back under his arm, pressed it tight to sweating armpit, rushed out empty with a magician's flourish. "Look here! Innocent! Look!" He gazed, shaken, at that white hand. He held it way out, as if he were far-sighted. He held it close, as if he were blind. "Montag!" He jerked about. "Don't stand there, idiot!" The books lay like great mounds of fishes left to dry. The men danced and slipped and fell over them. Titles glittered their golden eyes, falling, gone. "Kerosene!" They pumped the cold fluid from the numbered 451 tanks strapped to their shoulders. They coated each book. They pumped rooms full of it. They hurried downstairs. Montag staggered after them in the kerosene fumes. "Come on, woman!" The woman knelt among the books, touching the drenched leather and cardboard, reading the gilt titles with her fingers while her eyes accused Montag. "You can't ever have my books," she said. "You know the law," said Beatty. "Where's your common sense? None of those books agree with each other. You've been locked up here for years with a regular damned Tower of Babel. Snap out of it. The people in those books never lived. Come on now." She shook her head. "The whole house is going up," said Beatty. The men walked clumsily to the door. They glanced back at Montag, who stood near the woman. "You're not leaving her here," he protested. "She won't come." "Well, force her then." Beatty raised his hand, in which was concealed the igniter. "We're due back at the house. Besides, these fanatics always try suicide. The pattern's familiar." Montag placed his hand on the woman's elbow. "You can come with me." "No," she said. "Thank you anyway." "I'm counting to 10, said Beatty. 1, 2... "Please," said Montag. "Go on," said the woman. 3, 4... "Here!" Montag pulled at the woman. The woman replied quietly, "I want to stay here." 5, 6... "You can stop counting," she said. She opened the fingers of one hand slightly, and in the palm of the hand was a single slender object, an ordinary kitchen match. The sight of it rushed the men out and down away from the house. Captain Beatty, keeping his dignity, backed slowly through the front door, his pink face burnt and shiny from 1,000 fires. God, thought Montag, how true. Always at night the alarm comes, never by day. Is it because the fire is prettier by night? More spectacle, a better show. The pink face of Beatty now showed the faintest panic in the door. The woman's hand twitched on the single matchstick. The fumes of kerosene bloomed up above her. Montag felt the hidden book pound like a heart against his chest. Okay, so quick review of Fahrenheit 451. It's in third person limited, you may have already picked up. And the character goal, Montag, he's the main character. He's the character through whose eyes we see events. He wants to carry out his duty and burn the books which the woman has concealed in her house. The goal is quite simple, but there are obstacles. Firstly, the woman shouldn't be there. The police are supposed to get there in advance and take the kind of victims away, if you like, before the books are burnt. But the woman was there. Problem number one. Secondly, she's being difficult. She's being argumentative and stroppy, and so that's caused another problem for them. Number three, by accident, but then he decides to keep it, Montag has taken a book. Okay, well, it lands on him, but he decides to keep it, and that's against the law. So he's committed a sin there, a crime. And then finally, the woman burns the house herself, which could have burnt all the firemen with it. So there we are. So character goal: he wants to carry out his duty and burn the books. There's lots of problems, mainly due to the woman being there. And at the end, Montag has illegally kept a book. So the direction of the story is now altered, where Montag is sort of engaged in something that's previously a law-abiding citizen, he's now committed a crime, and he's going to have to deal with that. So how much are we asking you to write? Well, if you aim for between 400 and 500 words, I mean the Fahrenheit 451 extract is a lot longer than we'd expect you to write, although you're of course very welcome to write that if you are motivated and you've got some ideas that you want to develop. So that was about 900 words long, but as I say, that's a lot longer, well, quite a bit longer than we'd expect you to write. But we're looking for sort of 400 or 500 words. That's a sort of typed page of on a Word document. Okay. Now, how to be students often ask, well, not just students, anybody who's writing always finds it very difficult to begin. If we look at Fahrenheit 451 as an example, it does set a scene, doesn't it? And I think because we're in a dystopian world, go back, remember we did a lot of work on describing the setting. It's important, isn't it, to know where we are, because it's going to be an unusual place, and give a hint of that unusual, give a hint that to the reader that there's something not right about this place, something odd. So in the example from 1984, we had the clock striking 13. And in this example here, let's have a look. It was a flaking 3-story house, had a fireproof plastic sheath many years ago. That in itself is quite unusual, isn't it? Why would a house have a thin fireproof plastic sheath? So although it seems quite normal, there's a little detail that tells us there's something odd about this place. So that's quite a good way to start with some description. It just quite simple description, isn't it? It was a flaking 3-story house. But there's a little detail in it, in that opening paragraph, that suggests that there's something strange. So try and approach it like that if you can. That's not the only way to do it, but that's one possible way, and it'd be good to set the scene quite early, because we are in a dystopia and the world is going to be strange to the reader, and so the setting is going to be an important part of your writing. So the aim of this week's lessons is for you to complete this dystopian scene. And if we're aiming for 400 words minimum by the end of the week, you're talking about sort of 150 words per lesson. And I would recommend you aim for that, because what will happen otherwise, if you leave it and get behind, you then have a load of writing to do right at the last minute, and it won't be as good, will it? So get on top of it straight away and aim to get 150 words at least completed by the end of the first lesson. And then sort of middle of the week might be an opportunity. I mean, I'm sure your teacher will be happy for you to submit work at any time for them to give an opinion on. And initially they're just going to give you a quick bit of feedback. They won't have time to mark everything that you do this week. But if you just wanted to comment, or you just wanted to see if you're going in the right direction, I'm sure they could give a quick bit of feedback to you. And what I'd ask you to do is submit your work in progress, just for a quick glance, quick bit of feedback from your teacher by Wednesday at the latest. And it will be literally just a teacher will give it a quick look over, make a comment or two, and then you can carry on and finish it off. Okay, but remember, the ultimate deadline is this Friday. Best of luck to you.